Conducting research and using research tools. Dear students, you must know the tips which are involved in conducting your research, and you must also be able to use those tools which are really important for researchers. So in this session, we are going to talk about multiple research techniques and multiple research tools which you will be using ultimately as a researcher, right? So you must be mapping out a research strategy when you are required to go for a particular research study, and you should also try to learn about particular tools like, for example, EndNote. So EndNote is basically a bibliographic software. If you know this EndNote software and you have this on your laptop, then you would be easily doing a lot of technical things which may otherwise take your lots of times. Okay, then the web sources, you must know that how would you be using web sources more efficiently, more effectively, because researchers are required to use a lot of web sources. And then you should also know about those softwares which are used for checking your similarity indexes, like the one is called Turnitin, which is available to university faculty members in the country by Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, and it is given free of cost. Okay, so these are the points, the examples of the tools which may be known to you as researchers. Okay, so you must be posing questions which are worth exploring, and you are not actually spending your time on something which is not really worth exploring, right? So you must be exploring questions which are genuine, the original questions, because you must be narrowing down the area. You must be particularly focusing on specific research questions, right? Avoiding the broader general categories of research, because we are required to go for more narrowed, more specific research topics, right? So these are the points, and you must also be able to find research articles like the sources through databases or indexes, and for that purpose you are required to know particular techniques, particular tips, right? So we would be discussing some of them also in this session. And then definitely you should also be a very good user of library sources, like searching for books and searching for periodicals and also searching for web pages. So you must be able to using them. And then the research tools are really important, and you must also think about conducting field researchers, because field researchers are also really important. And in the area of linguistics and applied linguistics as well as theoretical linguistics, we are also required to go for field trips and field data collection. And there are particular tools which are the part of field researchers. So you should also spare time to learn them and use them in your research studies, right? So in the next slide, I'm going to talk about a sample which is based on the steps, particular steps required to be followed by particular active researchers. Okay, so you would see that how those tips are involved, how those steps are important, and how could you use them for your completion of research studies. Okay, so this is actually the slide, and I'm taking you to this slide. Just imagine that you are required to start a research work on a particular month, and the month, let's suppose, is October, for example. So you are given on 3rd October a topic, and just imagine that it's an assignment. Okay, so on 3rd you receive your topic. On 4th you are posing questions which you want to explore, right? And then within next more 2 days you are talking about the reference books, and you are talking to a librarian, and you are planning a research strategy. So your 3 days activity is that you are posing research questions, and then you are looking for references. Okay, on 7th of the month you are settling down on the topic, narrowing it, and focusing on it. Then you are revising your research question on the next day, right? So revise your research questions, and you are locating for sources. Okay, you're reading, taking notes, and compiling your working bibliography in the next 4 days, right? So these are the important steps required for locating sources and collecting information to be used in your literature review, and you are preparing a working bibliography as well. The next is that you are drafting your thesis statement, right? So this is actually the thesis statement, which is an outline of your research paper as well. And then the next day you will start drafting the paper. Okay, so starting with the working thesis, then looking for supporting. You just know that these are based on your 4 days exploration of sources available in your library, right? And then in the next week you are drafting your paper, right, for the first 3 days of the week. And then you are visiting the writing center of the feedback for the feedback. In a Pakistani context particularly, this is like visiting your supervisor. You would be sharing your draft with your supervisor, and then you would be doing some additional changes, additional research work, and that is based on your meeting with the supervisor, right? So that's the week which is done on these steps. And the next week is when you are sharing your work with your peers, your class fellows, your senior class fellows, and you are asking for their feedback, and then the feedback is used for revising your paper, right, within the first 4 days of your week. And then in the last 3 days you are preparing a list of works cited, right, because you incorporated the feedback of your seniors. So now you are required to prepare the works cited list. And if you are using APA style, then you are working on your references, and then you would proofread your final draft, because now you are in a position to prepare your final draft. And then after proofreading, you would be giving a final look to your assignment before submitting it to your examiner, to your teacher, right? And then the final submission is done. The final draft is submitted to the examination department, because it is the assignment. So it is submitted, it is supposed to be submitted to your examiner on the 31st of the week. So you see, this is 1 month process. And how many steps are involved? You just imagine that you are starting with posing questions, and then refining your questions, and then narrowing down your topic, revising your research question, then taking notes, and starting drafting your thesis statement, and then supporting it, and then drafting and redrafting, and then visiting your supervisor, and then incorporating those changes which are proposed by your research supervisor, and then ask for your peers' help, and then again working on your final draft. And while doing that, you are preparing your end list of references. So these are the steps, and it's a typical schedule for the completion of an assignment, right? So that's the basic idea of the completion of your assignment. When you are done with this, you must imagine that you are in a position to know those detailed steps of the completion of an assignment, right? Next, you should know that as a researcher, you should choose a narrow and challenging question or questions, right? Because the more specific your research question is, the more appropriate your research would be, right? And you should know that what's your assignment. So how would you, explore your nature of the assignment? And it is based on your academic discipline, right? So what kind of academic discipline you are following, and within that discipline, what is your research assignment, and what could be your tentative research question, right? So these are the points which are to be explored while narrowing down your topic, right? And then how long will the paper be, right? So that's the idea about the paper. And how much time can you spend on the project? So these are the questions which are used for narrowing down your topic, right? When you are to take a challenging question or questions and narrow down your topic, you are required to go through these, questions. And while answering these questions, you would also think about databases which are required. And how would you approach a database? So let me just give you some tips that how would you explore a database. The one tip is that you must be using quotation marks, right? So if you are using quotation marks, then your databases, which will show you those documents, those theses and journal articles, would be more specifically focusing on your topic, right? So the topic should be written in quotation marks while searching through web sources. Then the next point is that you would be using and, A and D and, to connect words. Like, for example, you need information, you need, sources which are based on hyperactivity and children. So when you are using and, in some web pages or web databases, this and is replaced with the plus sign. So you can use and, either and or plus sign when you want to collect information on particular two topics or two words. Okay. Then you can also use the word not in front of a word, in front of words that must not appear in a document. So if you want to collect information, but you do not want that information to be based on a particular aspect, so you can just use not and negating that particular word. So you are actually you're not including that particular aspect of the topic. Like in this case, you are looking for a Persian Gulf, not war. So the information which will be coming up from the databases would include the phrase Persian Gulf, but without war. So war will not be the part of the information search. Okay. So that not is really important in this context when you are looking for information. And in some databases, that not is replaced with the minus, symbol, right? So the minus sign is given. Like, for example, you are looking for Persian Gulf information, but you do not need the information related to war. So it would be Persian Gulf minus war. So minus war, that the information related to war is not added. And then you can also use the word or if you want to include terms which may appear in a document, right? Like, for example, you want to include mountain lion, you want to include information mountain lion or cougar, right? So you are using this or word, and that would provide you the information, the documents which are based on both of those, any of the two phrases. And then you can also use the asterisk as a substitute for letters that might have different spellings, right? So if you're using this asterisk, then it shows that any other variant form of the spellings may also be included, right? Like in this case, when you are using in quotation mark marine biology, but you are not completely writing down biology, B-I-O-L-O-G, and then there is this asterisk symbol, right? So that asterisk symbol means that any form of the biology spellings, it could be biology, it could be biologist, or it could be biologists, the plural form, right? So any variant of this word would be there. So that's another tip which you should know. And you would also be using parentheses to group a search expression and combine it with another, right? So if you are combining more than one search expressions and you are using with parentheses, then that would be added and the database would include that, right? So standard or student or test and reform, right? So parentheses to group a search expression and combine it with another. So in the parenthesis, standard or student or test with asterisk. So for the test, it could be like testing, right? Or test, right? Or tested, right? So that is actually the variant form of a test which is acceptable, and the parentheses are used in order to combine them together. So these are some of the tips which you will use for your online search through databases, and you would be, efficiently doing your research work.